So many people come to me with ideas and little stories and bits of notes and pictures and diary entries and absolutely no idea what to do with them. And this, my friends, is what I call being too in the weeds. And today I want to talk about it because it is one of the biggest, most nefarious things that can derail your progress on your memoir. And that problem is focusing too much on the internal stuff without developing a structure to hold it all. Stay tuned. In my team's 30 plus years in publishing, we see the same thing over and over. Women do not ask for the help we need. But if you are going to write a memoir that you are truly proud of, you are going to need training, you're going to need accountability, and you're going to need support to make sure that the whole thing is so much fun. And you're in luck because you can head over to the Memoir Method and enroll in our very next group cohort starting next month. Just head over to pageandpodium.com/memoir-method to learn more and apply. So today we are talking about the problem of being so in the weeds that you're not able to really see the big picture. And I want to talk through one specific client journey here because I think a lot of you will see yourself in what Jan was going through. So this is a former client, Jan. This is from years and years ago, actually, before the Memoir Method even existed, or I guess it existed, it just hadn't been developed or written down yet, only in my head. So Jan had come to me with a very kind of traditional memoir story. She had been working on her memoir for about 7 or 8 years. It was the story of how she overcame a lot of childhood trauma, issues with her mother, and her mother kind of being a little bit wanting to be too close to her mother really needing a lot of emotional reassurance from her. And in a lot of ways, it really had her develop some really unhealthy mental issues. She had some issue with alcoholism later in life. She had some impulse control kind of issues. She had trouble getting close to people. All of the hallmarks of childhood trauma, right? And what Jan had done is she had written down all of the scenes that she knew had to go in her book. And she did this in what I think was a really smart way for her at the time, which is she started a blog. Now, this is a great idea because what she was able to do was build her audience through this blog. And each blog post was just a different little story or a vignette, or sometimes she would share a recipe or a song that she liked or a picture, all these things. She worked on this for, like I said, about 7 or 8 years. And as we got to about the year 5 or 6 mark, she started to realize, oh my gosh, I don't have a memoir. I have a blog, which is fine. There is nothing wrong with a blog, but Jan wanted a memoir. She knew if she told her story in one cohesive book that she would be able to help a lot of people identify what had happened to her in their own lives and then get the treatment that she had been able to get because she was able to recognize this mental health struggle was stemming from childhood trauma. But when she came to me, she had not gotten even close to a cohesive structure. She just had pages and pages of draft scene stories and advice. And what she needed help with was figuring out how to piece it together. But here's the thing, and this is what I find so often. She had not really even been able to make an attempt. She was so paralyzed by the idea that she had to take these hundreds of pages of notes and journals and diary entries and blog posts and put them into one book. She had no idea how to do it. This happens all the time, friends. And what I call this is being too in the weeds. So before I tell you how to solve this, I want to get at what some of the causes are. Because the thing is, you have got to be able to step back from the weeds to see what you need to do differently. And until you know why you are so tied to these details and so tied to these blog posts or stories or whatever, you are going to really struggle to get that distance from those weeds. Okay, so I have 3 causes, and I want you to really look inside yourself and see whether any of these apply, because these are the kinds of things that we want to help people overcome through the Memoir method, through our mentorship, through the accountability that we have in there, through our group sessions. Okay, so without further ado, the first reason, I think the most common reason that folks get so stuck in the weeds that we want to write, we'll just write all the stories and then we'll deal with the structure later. I think the main reason is what I call red pen syndrome. Now, if you grew up in the US, in public schools, anytime in the past probably 100 years, maybe longer, you probably turned in a piece of creative writing, a story, an essay about yourself, something that felt really creative, something that you really worked hard on. And I bet you turned it in, and I bet it came back marked up. Now, I've always been a pretty good writer, maybe you have too, so you probably still got an A, right? But there were probably commas that were circled, little caret marks, or anybody else starting to break into a sweat as I'm narrating this. All kinds of little bugaboos that your teacher found in your writing. Now, I bet when you got that marked up paper back, I bet what you thought was, why does it matter? I was trying to express some particular idea, some part of myself, some creativity. Why does it matter if the commas are all in the right place? Why does it matter if I spelled every word correctly? And you know what? I don't think it does matter. It's late, I'm a little loopy. Go with me here. Here is the thing. When you were writing in grade school and high school, the thing that you were learning to do was not to write a book. The thing that you were learning to do was use proper grammar. Your teacher chose to use a creative writing prompt or your personal essay because they wanted you to get really into doing the writing so you could kind of forget about the mechanics, and then they could see where you were struggling, right? And that's why they corrected it. The purpose was never the creativity, at least not in total. The purpose was always learning one little set of skills, also known as the weeds. But here is the thing. When you are publishing a book, whether you're self-publishing, hybrid publisher, going for a traditional contract, you are doing something very different. No one is evaluating your use of commas. No one is evaluating your spelling. No one is evaluating your formatting unless you skip hiring an editor. And we would never do that, right? If you have been following this channel, you know you need someone to edit for you. Well, guess what? When you hire an editor, it takes care of red pen syndrome because it really doesn't matter. But here's what I think happens. I think folks like Jan have gotten this red pen syndrome so drilled into their psyche that they cannot let it go. So as we're writing these little scenes and stories and whatnot, we are so hung up, not just on those little pieces as the weeds, but the letters and the punctuation and the spacing weeds. So we're in the weeds of the weeds. And that can be a recipe for not being able to step back and say, what really am I trying to communicate? So if that sounds familiar, okay, I'm going to tell you how to solve it in just a second. But there is a second cause that goes so neatly along with the first one, and that is a love of beautiful prose. I bet so many of you listening can relate to this. You're probably a reader, or if you're not a regular reader, you may at least enjoy kind of like really nicely worded quotations, things like poetry, song lyrics. You like the words. OMG, me too. I have always loved thinking about how beautiful words can fit together. We can create symbolism. We can create these vivid intellectual and emotional pictures. I love it. But the time to develop that beautiful prose is, again, not when you're drafting your memoir. The time when you will really polish and refine that prose to be beautiful and contain all that symbolism, that's in the revisions. Yeah? But when we get so into the idea that our memoir has to be beautifully written at a sentence level, and when that is our starting point instead of our ending point, what we are going to experience is that we will not be able to move forward beyond those little vignettes. We cannot see what we have because we're so hung up on the sentence level structure. Okay, if that sounds like you, if you also have red pen syndrome, hold tight. Again, I'm going to give you a solution for this, but I want to give you one more reason. And this was very, very true of Jan. She felt as though if she got all these blog posts out, all these little vignettes, if she got all of these little details all together, then she would be able to show them to people, which she did. She had a blog, remember? And those people would tell her whether she was right or wrong. Do you recognize the very close cousin to red pen syndrome here? Because here's the thing I want you to take away. There is no right or wrong in your memoir. It's not a thing. Your memoir is your memoir. It needs to express what you want to say. It needs to cover the topic that you want to share. But there is no right or wrong. And if what you are using to guide your path forward is this external validation, then what you're going to want to do, as Jan did, is get a little bit out at a time so you can get a little bit more approval, a little bit more praise. And guess what? She was getting that. But do you know what happens when we get so hooked on the external validation of little milestones? All the big milestones get so scary. Because here's the thing, you can write a blog post in an afternoon. You probably will have a comment or two if you have a well-trafficked blog by the end of the evening. When you are structuring a book, it is going to take you much, much, much longer, and you are going to feel a little bit out to sea. You're going to feel like you're not quite sure what you're supposed to be doing. You're going to feel like you don't know if you've just messed the whole thing up. Just go back to the old document because I had made a mess of everything. You are going to feel like you're struggling all the time. So here's the good news. For all three of those problems, the problem of red pen syndrome, the problem of loving beautiful prose, and the problem of going for external validation, they all three have the same solution, and the solution is structure. Yes, I am a broken record. This is what I say all the time, but it is really, really true. So I want to tell you what we did with Jan, because I think that's going to be really helpful if you are in this spot, you've just got all this stuff and you don't know how to organize. I want to tell you what we did. So the first thing we did is we took all of the things she had written. Now, most of her blog posts were just single events. She didn't have a lot that, were kind of multiple events with commentary. Most of it was just single stories. So the first thing we did was we took an inventory. If you've been watching long, you will recognize that an inventory is a close cousin to a brain dump. All you do with an inventory is you're going to go through, it's a little tedious, you're going to go through each of those weedy details, each of those stories or each of those diary entries, whatever you've got, and you are going to write down what you have. 1, 2, 3 words. Very brief. I recommend an Excel spreadsheet for this, by the way, but you can do it on paper, you can do it in a Google Doc, whatever you would like. So in the first column, all the way on the left, you're going to list every single thing you have, all of these puzzle pieces that you can fit together to make your cohesive memoir. In the next column, the second column from the left, if the thing you are inventorying is a story, you are going to put at least a year. If you have a more specific, a month or even a day, you're going to put that too, but you're going to put some kind of a timestamp. When did that thing happen? Now, you will very quickly be able to see which items in the list are stories and which items in the list are not. So those might be things like ideas, concepts that you want to teach, the things that you've learned. These will be much more general kind of thematic things. What we are focused on first, and what Jan and I worked on first, was the stories. Now, she came up with, it was quite an inventory. I think she had maybe 200, 250 items in her spreadsheet. And what we saw right away was that her items were a huge span of time. They went from maybe when she was born, maybe like 1952, all the way to like the 2000s. That is a huge time span. Now, it makes sense. She's talking about childhood trauma. Her childhood really, really matters. But if you listen to this show, you will know that we have got to bracket. So the next thing that Jan and I did is we looked at that timeline and we decided which is the most important story. And I mentioned earlier, right, that Jan had a problem with alcoholism. She was able to overcome it, but it was debilitating in her life for a good chunk of her daughter's teenage years. And that was really, really hard for her because she had wanted to give her daughter a better life than she had had. Well, what we decided was if we took the story of her alcohol dependency, which started around the time shortly after her daughter was born and ended when her daughter was a teenager, 18, 19. What if we took that? It's still a pretty wide range, but that would allow us to focus on a core topic, which is my struggle with alcohol, and allow us to dial in a core message, which was, if you are struggling with addiction, it may be a result of childhood trauma. Very tight, very easy to understand message and topic. From there, we were then able to go into that brain dump. We were able to choose the beginning of the story, which was when she kind of first picked up alcohol after she had her baby, after she was not pregnant anymore. And it went all the way through when she almost drove drunk head on into a semi with her daughter in the car. That was when she kind of turned around, and then we had a short resolution where she was healing from that. In the middle of that timeline, we were then able to weave in all of the stories from her childhood so that in the end, the reader could very easily see how this event from her childhood corresponded with that event from her struggle with alcoholism. We were able to paint a really clear parallel journey between her childhood and the struggles that her dysfunctional childhood had caused her later in her life. From there, everything else was easy, right? Because we didn't just make up that list of stories and ideas. She had the materials already. So all we had to do then was take that order that we had set up in her inventory, put the blog posts into that order, and then all we had to do was go through, smooth out the transitions, make sure the message was clear. It was so easy once she stepped back, got a sense in that inventory of what she had to work with, and really started thinking about the big picture, the core topic and the core message. Now, usually we suggest if you are very advanced like this, so you have pre-written blog posts for everything in your life, it may be that the Memoir method is not exactly the right program. Most people in that group program have started maybe a little bit, or they're starting from just an idea. We do have one-on-one coaching if you've got all these pieces. That's what Jan was doing, in fact. But if you have got little trinkets of your past, diary entries, photos, letters from your mother, those are things that we can work with, and we can get those on paper in a beautiful way where you don't have to struggle the way Jan did. You do not have to hang out in the weeds. You can just start by looking at your structure. You can zoom out, and we are here to help you do that. So now is your chance. I would love to see you in this program starting next month. Head over to pageandpodium.com/memoir-method to learn more about the program. You will see that shiny orange coral-ish button that says apply. Fill out the application. We will get back to you right away with either some suggestions on how to move forward if the program is not right for you, or we hope we will be able to accept you into the program and send you information on getting enrolled and getting in this program now. All right, happy writing. I cannot wait to see your application for the program, meet you, get to know you, and cheer on your book through the very end. Happy writing. In my team's 30 plus years in publishing, we see the same thing over and over. Women do not ask for the help we need. But if you are going to write a memoir that you are truly proud of, you are going to need training. You are going to need accountability to keep your progress on track, and you are going to need support to make sure that the whole thing is so much fun. And now is your chance to enroll in the next cohort of the Memoir Method, the group program designed specifically to help women write and finish their memoirs. Head over to pageandpodium.com/memoir-method to learn more and apply. I can't wait to meet you.